Standard 8 is solving absolute value equations. So this first example, the absolute value of x equals 4. I'd like to figure out some numbers that if I took their absolute value, I would get 4. So one number is 4. The absolute value of 4 is 4. Another number that would give you an absolute value of 4 is negative 4. Because the absolute value of negative 4 is positive 4. These get a little bit more complicated if there's more numbers inside the absolute value than just an x. For this equation, I want to know a number that if I took away 1, I would have an absolute value of 7. So I'm going to use algebra to help me figure that out. I want a number where if I take away 1, I would get 7. So I add 1 to each side, and x is 8. Seems a little silly I did algebra. It seems like you could have just figured that out, right? But it's a little bit more confusing to get the second answer with the negative. So I want a number x minus 1 that's going to equal negative 7. If it equals negative 7, after I take its absolute value, I'll get positive 7. So I'll just write that out in an equation. So to solve this, I will add 1 to each side. And I get x equals negative 6. Let's check both of these answers and put them back in and see if they work. If x is 8, 8 minus 1 is 7, and the absolute value of 7 is 7. The second answer, negative 6 minus 1 is negative 7. When I take the absolute value of negative 7, I get 7. So the way to solve an absolute value equation is you take what's inside the absolute value and you set it equal to the 7 or negative 7, the number and the negative of the number. You have to have two equations and then you'll get two answers. Let's try two more examples that are a little bit more complicated. So before I make the two equations, I have to get the absolute value by itself. To do that, the absolute value is multiplied by 2. I'm going to divide each side by 2. So that gives me the absolute value of x plus 6 equals 2. So my two equations are going to be x plus 6 equals 2 and x plus 6 equals negative 2. To solve those, I'll subtract 6 from each side. X equals negative 4. And now I subtract 6 from each side here. And I get x equals negative 8. Let's see if those work. Negative 4 plus 6, that's positive 2. The absolute value of 2 is 2, and 2 times 2 is 4. With negative 8, a negative 8 plus 6 is negative 2. The absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2, and once again, 2 times 2 is 4. So let's try this big long one. So to get the absolute value by itself, first I'm going to have to add 3 to each side. So I get 6 times the absolute value of 2x plus 1 equals 12. Now I have to divide each side by 6. So that gives me the absolute value of 2x plus 1 equals 2. So now I can write two equations. 2x plus 1 equals 2, or 2x plus 1 equals negative 2. So to solve this equation, I'll subtract 1 from each side. Get 2x equals 1, divide by 2, divide by 2, x equals 1 half. Over here, I'm going to subtract 1 from each side. I get 2x equals negative 3, divide by 2, divide by 2, x equals negative 3 halves. Let's put those in. They're fractions, but they have 2's in the denominator, so we should be able to do this. 2 times 1 half, that's 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. The absolute value of 2 is 2. 6 times 2 is 12. 12 take away 3 is 9. All good. Negative 3 halves. 2 times negative 3 halves is negative 3. Negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. Take the absolute value and you get 2. 6 times 2 is 12. And 12 take away 3 is 9. So we've done it correctly.